Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. Today we have the wonderful, incredible person. I actually met him on Instagram. I've been doing this a lot recently, going out and kind of just perusing the Instagram webs, sometimes on Facebook, and picking people out that I think have a great story and really have somewhere that they could use a bigger stage to express that. So this is Mr. Jenz Bunnell, and I'm going to let him tell you his kind of childhood story and where he's at today, because it's incredible. But he is the owner of Rise Above and creator of Be the Reason Others Believe. Now, I love just even that tagline. I think it speaks so much to what I'm doing on the podcast, why I'm doing Fuel Your Legacy podcast. I've been coming into a lot of people recently over the last few weeks of people who really, I feel like, embody the brand and the feeling and what I believe this podcast is meant to be. And in fact, I wrote a whole book, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy, titled Fuel Your Legacy. That is essentially, if you summed up that whole book into one phrase, it is this: be the reason for others to believe. And so super excited to have him on here. If you want access to that ebook, just text my number, ebook, E-B-O-O-K, and that number is 385-263-7699, and you can get access to that ebook. I'd love to share it and love to hear your thoughts on what my opinion is of why it's important to build a meaningful legacy. But with that being said, Jenz, I'm super excited for you to share your story. Go ahead and just give us a little bit of background as to kind of who you are, where you came from, and how you got to this point in your life.
Definitely. Thanks, Sam. Where I'm at right now, like Sam said, leading kind of this movement of be the reason others believe. And this kind of started even before I was born. And before I get into that, I'll kind of tell you kind of where, just starting out where I'm at right now with, the past 2 years. I graduated about 2.5 years ago. In the past 2 years, I was working at Goldman Sachs. It was kind of my dream job coming out of school. Something that, I was really looking forward to, worked hard for. But a year into it, as much as it was a great place to start a career, I started to realize what I really wanted to do and the influence that I felt that, my story and as well as, what others can do for others in a sense. And I wanted to find my place in that. So I left Goldman Sachs, bless my wife's heart for sticking through with me and taking the lead.
You married her first, right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yes.
She can't run.
But we kind of took the leap away from that and started Rise Above with a business partner, where we produce motivational content. He's a professional drone pilot, and so we create drone footage and films and put motivational messages behind it. And we've built off that, and then kind of my speaking side of Be the Reason Others Believe, going from that. And I took that step because I, in a sense, believed in myself. Believed that there was a message to be shared. But that belief in myself isn't because I think I'm so great or something, but it's something that I was given at a very young age, since birth, really, that has propelled me to where I am now. And so the foundation of it all starts even before I was born. My mom, so I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. My sister's 12 years older than me, and my brother's 9 years older. So there's a big gap.
And between all of you.
Yeah. And I wasn't a surprise, as a lot of people will ask, being 9 years after my closest sibling. But after my mom had my sister and my brother, they felt and believed that they had one more child. They felt like the family wasn't quite complete. So that got difficult because the reason of that gap was my mom had 5 miscarriages in between my brother and I. And so obviously getting difficult after the third, fourth, fifth miscarriage. I believe it was the third and fourth is probably the most difficult. She was pretty far along in her pregnancy, and they were in a pretty serious car accident with a drunk driver. My mom, they were T-boned, and on my mom's side, she lost the baby. Drunk driver ran the intersection, a stop sign. And anyway, so but they kept believing that, and feeling like they had one more child that to be had, and so they got pregnant with me. Luckily, I was born, but when I was born, I came having cerebral hemorrhaging. It's bleeding and swelling of the brain. So immediately after being born, I was taken to the NICU and put in a massive incubator with tons of wires all over me. And after a couple of days, the doctors came to my mom and said, essentially, it's up to him, meaning that they've done everything they can, and now it's just to see if I can make it through. And luckily, I was able to go home, but for the next 3 months, I had infant seizures. Next 3 years, my immune system was really low and recovering, and so I was sick constantly. My mom always says that I cried the first 3 years of my life. But that being said, it wasn't because I feel like I was some just, resilient character from the very beginning, where I wasn't like 2 weeks old just telling myself, Jenz, you got this, you can make it through. But it was more so in the fact that my mom and my family believed that I would make it through. They believed that I'd make it out of the NICU. They believed that I would make it through those seizures. They believed I'd make it through, having the low immune system. And that belief really, set a foundation for the rest of my life, to where now I can believe in myself and believe in myself as a kid. So I guess moving from that into elementary school is where it started to really manifest itself, of the power of having a belief in yourself. I was notorious for, and probably set a record for, going to the principal's office in elementary school. It was probably a weekly, if not more, thing, where I would go into the principal's office, and the principal knew me, the vice principal knew my name, the secretaries knew my name, the nurse knew my name. Everybody in that office knew my name, and I knew theirs. I remember even and I guess I should say that the reason why I was in the principal's office is because I was getting in fights with the bullies, the people that were picking on other kids. I specifically remember one where it's fifth grade. I recently had just started playing tackle football. And there's this bigger kid getting really into it with another kid, really just kind of degrading him and saying mean things and getting in his face. And I just ran as fast as I could from his blind side and just nailed him and took him out as hard as I could. And as soon as we hit the ground, the recess lady came over, and all she saw was me just tackle this kid. So she's yelling at me, takes us to the office, and as soon as we walk into the principal's office, the principal looks at me and says, Jenz, you can go back to class. And he brings in the other kid because he just knew I had been in there enough for the same reason. But so with that, I don't think it was because I was some just justice warrior kid that was going to do what's right, but it was because I had a belief in myself, and I knew that if I could help the other person being picked on, know that somebody believed in them, that they were worth being stuck up for, that they then could in turn believe in themselves and feel worth it to themselves to stick up for themselves. And so, that's kind of been throughout my whole life. It didn't stop after elementary. I get myself sometimes into trouble, and gyms and stuff, when people are playing basketball and somebody's just talking trash and really gets into somebody's face and starts downgrading somebody's face. I've had my wife, we were just shooting hoops, and I got into it so many, and she just walked out of the gym because she knew that so it was about to go down. But that's, again, it's just that belief. I think we hold so much power within ourselves to help others believe in themselves, and that's sometimes all it takes is just encouraging words. It can take help getting on somebody's level, being compassionate, in order for them to see the potential that they have in themselves to then continue forward.
Yeah, so I just love that. The whole story is so fascinating. It's kind of unfortunately, and this is a part of my past that I don't mind when it resurfaces as far as talking about it, but I was the bully most of my life. And the interesting thing about being a bully, and I shouldn't say for everybody, but for myself, because of the abusive home that I came up in, rather than somebody, and this was interesting, my parents, they always expressed that they believed in us. They believed that we could do whatever we wanted and be whoever we wanted and grow, and like so much belief on that side as far as the creation and being able to create our lives. But on the other side of like so good, and then there was so bad, just like lots of abuse and neglect. And my way of protecting myself and what I believed was others was to become the abuser in the situation. And in my mind, I was protecting them. I was protecting them from worse abuse by ensuring that they did what they were supposed to before we all got beat, right? And so it's interesting because I had a time in my childhood where my older brother, honestly, just like I was wrestling another one of my older brothers down to the ground because I wanted to sleep on his bed, and he was not having it. I was like, I'm going to sleep on your bed, and I'm bigger than you, so you're just having to deal with it. Well, my older brother, Rex, he had just like had enough. Finally, he was home from college, came in, wrestled me down to the ground, and just held me there. Like I literally felt like I could not move even a muscle. Like I just couldn't move at all. I was screaming, "Get off of me. What are you doing?" I'm like, everybody should be grateful for what I do, and nobody's grateful. It's just like definitely full of myself. And then when I finally calmed down, he's like, "Sam, this is how other people feel emotionally when you walk into the room. Like they feel this restricted. They feel this much like terror of like they can't do anything without you going off the handle." And it had never occurred to me that I was being perceived or received in a negative light, because I always thought I was being this protector. I always thought I was like had this good vision of myself, this noble person, and it just wasn't showing up that way. So it's interesting to hear that, because I think that everybody probably struggles with that at some point of deciding, am I really doing this for the right reasons or not? Was there ever a time that you thought maybe I should let them fight their own battles so they can learn to stick up for themselves rather than me step in and kind of protect them?
Definitely. And I think, and I should say too, like I wasn't some saintly child that I never found myself, being a bully or saying mean things to somebody. I think everybody goes through that, and you learn in a certain way about that. I would say definitely there's benefit in learning how to fight your own fight. And I think that what unintentionally happened is when I started to step into those fights, initially it was me kind of being the quote protector or whatever. But by the end of, you kind of go with the same people throughout school. By the end of elementary, a lot of those kids were putting up a fight. They were putting back, and so I found myself less and less stepping in. I even had one kid I remember come and be like, "Jenz, this," I won't say his name, kid, was bullying me, and like, "Where were you? He was picking on me. Where were you?" I was like, "Look, like, I'm not going to be there all." I remember having this conversation on the basketball court at recess. Be like, "Look, I'm not always going to be there for you, man. You can stick up for yourself. You can tell them to stop. You can find ways to make it stop, and also to not let it affect you so much." And so I think just having the first step of, being able to stick up for somebody or give somebody a reason, then they take it from there, and because they found a reason, they found worth, they found a meaning that they can then run with. And I mean, like you said, that with, in my upbringing, I was lucky enough to have somebody that would just constantly, believe in me. And I think it was a sense of not only like, you can do anything you put your mind to, you can be and do whatever you want. But I think there's a sense of compassion that goes with it that helps people realize their potential. And, in my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl says, in there, he uses the word love. And I usually paraphrase and use the word compassion, not to confuse love with romantic love. It's more compassionate love that he's talking about, that if you show a man or show someone compassion, that by doing that, you then realize you can realize the potential that somebody has. And then by realizing that potential, you then enable the other person to actualize and realize their own potentiality within themselves. And then when it's actualized, then in that sense, they can go do something with it. They realize that they have that reason within inside them because of that compassion you showed. So I think it's twofold. And yes, believing in others and in yourself to do whatever you put your mind to, but in a sense also of that compassion to realize that you have something of worth to give to those things that you want to do, with that compassion in that. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I don't know if it's a dichotomy or what, but like dealing with both sides of it and trying to help somebody believe in themselves without stepping in too much and without almost using a crutch to kind of support them, but also protecting them enough that they're able to identify that. Because a lot of people, from like the psychological aspect, if they are in fight or flight mode, it doesn't really matter how much you can love them or talk to them or whatever. If they're in fight or flight mode, reaching into that part of who they are and saying, look, touching their heart and illuminating and saying, look, you have worth. It's so difficult if they're still in fight or flight mode. And so being able to remove them from fight or flight mode enough to help them see their identity while still leaving them there to actually overcome the struggle. I love the example of like the egg and a bird, right? If you help the bird out of its shell, or the caterpillar or the butterfly out of its shell, you just killed the bird. You killed the butterfly, right? It's like there has to be some form of struggle to get out, and that builds people, but then protecting enough to where they can get their mindset in a position where they can actually be touched and realize that they can be the butterfly, that they could be this majestic bird. And it's such a delicate balance to attain, especially through coaching or speaking on stage, to really reach in and touch these people's hearts to help them accomplish that.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I think going along with that, kind of using the bird analogy, and kind of goes back to Viktor Frankl in that book, is that if you can put meaning to suffering, then suffering that kind of ends. If you're able to put that meaning towards that, the suffering ends. And so if you're a bird inside an egg, you might have to suffer for a while. But if you know that there's meaning to it, if there's reason to it, that one day you're going to flourish and be able to fly, that, being stuck in that egg isn't so bad after all, because it has a purpose and there's a meaning. And being able to, I think, like you said, in those moments of people suffering, if you can allow them to see a reason with it, that not necessarily give them the thought of, okay, well, if I accomplish great things, this suffering's worth it. More so of, this suffering is worth it because I'm going to go and accomplish great things. Mm-hmm. And giving them a reason to believe in that, it ends a lot of the emotional suffering, I think, maybe not the physical. Viktor Frankl, he still had to go through, so much.
Yeah.
This awfulness, but it's a testament to the fact of, you put a reason towards it, you find that reason, and it gives you a reason to believe in something that you can be and do that's greater than that suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to fast forward here because I want to hear a little bit of, you've traveled, you lived in Russia, you worked on Capitol Hill, and then you went into Goldman Sachs. What was that transition from I feel like there are three very different environments, mm-hmm. very different objectives of why you're in each place. Like, what was it like shifting through all of those? I don't know if I would say like they're embodiments of ways that you're living your life, but still maintaining what you know inside yourself is your purpose. How did you manage that?
I think honestly, each of them kind of built a foundation to finding that purpose, finding that reason. In Russia, I had the opportunity to serve a lot of people. That's what I did, day in, day out, as you just serve. You look for people to serve, and honestly, to help them find a reason, again, to believe. in Russia itself, I was in Siberia, Russia, and I was there the coldest winter they had in 75 years. It was, I remember one night we were outside, it was negative 67 degrees.
That's insane.
For 3 months straight, the average was negative 45. So we're talking like cold. And
is it humid there as well?
no,
or
luckily it was dry. Luckily it was dry and
Right.
cold, but still.
I mean, it's so cold.
Yeah, once you get below like negative 40, it all feels the same. But everything's so frozen, and it was interesting to see the mindset. And in general, I wouldn't say everybody, but in general, there wasn't a lot of motivation and reason and this vigor to progress, and I feel like it's because in their past, their government and things like that it's been rough for them because they haven't had a lot of room to personally progress and grow. But serving them, just simply serving, we'd go and either pull potatoes or clean out, like they call them dachas, which are these countryside homes, that we'd go clean these out, and just giving them that sort of compassion, you would almost see within the week's time that you were with them or the month's time that you're with them, this internal growth of, okay, well, I have all these potatoes now. I'm going to go set up a stand on the corner and start selling them, or I'm going to go feed my neighbor, or things like that, to where you've now given them like this compassion that allows them to see, I have potential, whether it's these potatoes to go sell or potatoes to go give, but now you've passed on this reason to progress. But in the moment I didn't necessarily realize. I just would think, wow, that's a really cool thing. Going to Washington DC, obviously it was nonetheless, I was there during the election of 2016, so crazy time to be there. And it's everybody, I feel like, has found necessarily a purpose and a reason, but it's on a professional level. So going from a personal to professional level, they all have a reason. So it was interesting to see, and you could tell that people that were so focused professionally that they weren't almost, a lot of them, that was their reason, and a lot of them had lost their personal reason. I think I always think of the quote, and I kind of lead with the quote of that. I don't believe that necessarily people need something that they're willing to die for, but that there's something that they're willing to live for. And I think that goes beyond a career, beyond money, beyond anything, that's of that level, that it's something internal, it's not necessarily external. So anyway, that was kind of a cool dichotomy to see within that, and being there. Then the transition to Goldman Sachs, again, it's very driven people. You work a lot of hours, you spend a lot of time there. It's stressful. You're seeing, in my job, I would press a button and more or less, millions, even billions of dollars would leave the firm or come into the firm, and it was on you to make sure that it was good to go. So it's stressful stuff. But I think, again, the people that were there long enough found within themselves a reason to be there, and that kind of lifestyle matched their personal reason, and that's why they were able to, I'd say the people that were there for a long time that were happy,
Sure.
found that match, in between the two. So I think, and I've worked from those kind of firms, very high, intense, stressful, to, the tech companies that are a little bit more low key. You expected a lot, but more low key. And something I've kind of realized in business that goes along with being the reason others believe is a successful business doesn't, especially today and nowadays, is a very highly successful business with a successful kind of employee engagement where they don't have a lot of turnover and employees are staying, is that businesses aren't so much anymore, let me show you what we can do for you, our employee, but more so of, we hired you, employee, and this is why, because we believe that your skill set, is the reason that we believe in you. And we give you a sense of the employee believing in themselves to then go forward and benefit the company. And because if the employee has that reason to believe in themselves, then they'll believe in the company because they believe in what they're doing, what they can do for the company, and that retains the employee.
I don't think I've ever heard it said that way. I really like that. I have had employees come and go, and it's a little stressful, to be honest, like trying to rehire people or figure out what's who's really going to stick around. And I love that it's not about what somebody can do for them. I think it hits a lot of like, it's a lot packed into that one statement, because it really comes down to, are you enabling them to become, or are you basically saying you're not worth very much, but I'm gonna pay you more than I think you're worth.
We're gonna do you a favor.
Yeah, is the company doing the employee a favor, or is the employee doing the company a favor? And part of that, I think, is the millennial or even Generation Z type mindset, that they have options, that they can go wherever they want, and that they honestly, a lot of people, they don't even feel like they need to work for a company anymore, because they can go out and start their own company. And so if you want to entice somebody to work for your company rather than go start their own company, then you have to get them somehow bought into the vision of the company. And if they feel like it's more team work, like we're all part of this and we're all an essential part of this, then they're going to have more success. I do a whole speech to business owners specifically about that, and how redefining SMART goals to where they're designed to create more unity and involvement and camaraderie inside of the team, rather than is it attainable, can we do this without you type goals. Hey, the only way this goal is going to be accomplished is if everybody on board jumps on board, comes with like 100% of their talent, and maybe will accomplish and go down in history as accomplishing this great feat. And it's like no one of us is higher or lower. The executives, they're out working with the brand new people. They know the new people by name, and like it's just a different environment. So I think you nailed that perfect right on head. I'm curious, because I saw this happen in I did summer sales. I was not really committed to it my first year. Then I went out and I went to Scotland and Ireland, served an LDS mission for 2 years, and did very much similar things to, sounds like what you did in Russia, just serving, loving people, giving them compassion, and just like, hey, how can we help you get your life better? You know, like if I leave tomorrow, that's fine. Like, how can your life be better because I met you? And then coming back and going back into the summer sales world, it really does clarify what you want your identity to be. And I think there's a big separation between the people who are in the corporate world, or specifically sales world, and the who have an idea of their identity and their purpose, and the people who are just out selling things. I don't know if you've heard of Sam Taggart. He's awesome.
Yeah, did a podcast with you.
Does door-to-door con.
Yeah.
And I just saw on Facebook, or maybe it was Instagram, he was doing some training. He was talking about how he became passionate about solar, and how he had to work through the mindset so that he could sell it and feel good about himself, right? It's not that he felt bad about himself. He was indifferent until he decided, okay, well, what about solar can I get behind? Well, I think people need to make wise financial decisions, right? So it's in their best interest to make good financial decisions. Okay, if that's the case, then how is solar going to be a good financial decision for them? How is security going to be a good financial or safety decision, right? So he had to construct in his own mind why he was doing it before he became successful. And so many people in life, whether it's politics, sometimes even out when they're supposed to be serving God or serving people, they're still struggling finding this out, or in politics or in finance, wherever, they haven't really identified what their purpose is, what's their guiding, driving light. So when you were going through all these seemingly pretty drastic transitions, what were were there people who are saying, just stick with one thing? Were there people who were saying, don't do it, it's too much risk? Like what were the naysayers saying to you, and how did you silence them in your own mind? Not that you actually made them be quiet, but like, how did you silence them in your own mind?
Definitely, that's a great question. I was in Russia for that same reason, LDS Church Mission. Before I left, I played collegiate football at Dixie State University. And, one of the first, I remember one of the coaches saying, like, you come home from your mission and you're not going to be playing football anymore, and just thoughts like that, and saying, if you go, this is not a good decision for your football career. This is, it's essentially going to end it. And I had my mindset and I was going to do it. And again, I think it's because I had that purpose within myself of wanting to help people. And then, in Russia, and even though you're trying to serve people, there's naysayers there, but you hold on to the purpose of this is why I'm doing it. It doesn't matter how many people say, give you their reason of why you shouldn't be doing something. If you have your reason of why you should, for one, and why it's meaningful to you, I think that goes such a long way. And then career-wise, I've definitely taken kind of I've worked for a software company being an account manager. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I've worked as a financial, in the financial world at Goldman Sachs. I kind of in the realm of business, but jumped around all different things. And
very different sides of that realm, though.
And I've had a lot of people say, like, be careful, you don't want to be sporadic. And I get that. I think there is merit to that, being, you don't want to be like good at everything and great at nothing. I think you do need to have a skill, but at the same time, it's given me these experiences of seeing different lifestyles, different companies, different, motivations, and it's really kind of formed this sense of, being, the reason that somebody else believes. And I think going along with what you're saying of, finding, and I think that's what took me through. I was just taking good opportunities that I saw could help me progress and grow, because that was my reason at that point. My reason for taking those is because this is a great opportunity to grow and see the world in a different way, personally and in business. And I think that getting down to the roots, just like you're saying, Sam Taggart, it wasn't just selling for him, but it was selling with a purpose. And I think, I had the opportunity about 2 months ago to go speak to a few people that were struggling. They were in the court system due to substance abuse, and they were about to lose their children. They were at the last straw. And so what they had to do is they had to go in bi-weekly, twice a month, and they go to this group where all of them gather, and there's probably 20 people, and they would gather, and they would have, throughout the weeks, they'd have trackers, counselors, therapists, and then they would have to meet with the judge every week. And then they would go to these classes, and it was incredible to go and speak to these people, because they had seen and crazy things and made poor decisions in their lives, but they were at this point where, I have my kids that I want to keep and help, and I have myself that I want to help, and that became their reason of being there. But then we talked about of who they wanted to become, and we went beyond just like a label, like a good parent. A lot of them say, I want to be a good parent. It's like, okay, that's a what, but who is that good parent? It's just like, okay, I want to sell solar. Okay, that's the what, but what kind of salesman, who are you going to be in that? And it's finding those base attributes. And so we got down to, okay, well, I want to be a protector. I want to be, and I remember protector and strong, courageous, getting down to those, because now that's their reason, that's who they now believe they want to be, is courageous. And so anything that comes in their life that now is contradictory to being courageous, to being a protector, they now know that's not a decision a choice they're willing to make, to then forego the opportunity to be who they want to be. So it's, it's establishing that reason for them to then move forward and be. And so I think kind of going into the business world is, you find your reason. And again, that's why it's so important for companies to help their employees build that foundation of not just being an account manager or being a salesman, but it's being an account manager that you have this skill and this skill and this skill. We're going to use you to then plug you into our equation.
Yeah, and without you, that the equation doesn't really work completely. I'm curious, and I don't know why this came to my mind. It doesn't really have a lot to do with talking about it, except for I think it spurs in my mind, like what helps me in my life, what because I think everybody at times, they're all going to doubt ourselves. Everybody's going to do that at some point, right? And for me, my wife is everything to me, and I love her dearly, and I'm so grateful for her support and her willingness to like be okay with transition. I mean, that's a scary thing for a lot of people. You kind of mentioned it at the beginning. Like, how did you meet your wife? What was the conditions? Like, what did she think she was getting into versus what she's at right now? I wish she was here to answer this question for herself, but
Yeah, definitely. Man, well, she puts up with a lot, that's for sure. We have definitely a super interesting meeting story. I mean, the first time we ever met was I flew down to Phoenix and she met me in the airport, and we went on our first date right after that. Our whole engagement and dating was long distance, so we put on like 30,000 miles between our two cars, and that's not including flights. Like, there was a lot in an 11 months, almost 12 months from when we met to where we got married is a full year. But
how did you meet though?
Like, so it was through one of my best friends that I met playing football. He married her sister, and like fast forward, so my best friend is now my brother.
Okay, that's cool. And he said, yeah, just fly down to Arizona to go on a date with this girl.
Yeah, it was his wife wrote us both and said, hey, come down, I want to say it with my sister. And that's how it happened. But I think we've come a long way together. I think the main thing, I mean, this is kind of going to now like relationship 101, but
sure,
the main thing through these changes that we've made and gone through is communication, and make sure we're both on the same page. And luckily for me, like the whole believing, you know, my wife has been nothing but supportive, nothing but, you know, believing. And again, that's fortifying to me, and, you know, self-assuring to the fact of like the person, you know, that's closest to me, you know, now it believes in me, you know. And so again, it can just work wonders, you know, if you're able to instill that into somebody. And the one thing, I guess, kind of going off this, that one of my favorite idea behind this whole be the reason others believe is that you can't take somebody farther than you haven't gone already yourself. You can't take somebody to know something that you don't know yourself. And so if you're in the place to then help others believe in themselves and be the reason for them, you first have to believe in yourself and have a reason. Whether it's for that split second where you're helping somebody, because then you're in the belief that you can help somebody, you know, and then that only builds. And so for you to go out and help somebody else believe, it first allows you to find the belief in yourself and the reason of why you believe in yourself. So it's very introspective as well as, you know, and I think it goes directly and indirectly, you know, in your influence, where you can directly be helping somebody, or you can just be being a good person because that's what you believe. That's your reason, is I'm going to, you know, live this lifestyle. And I think we see, you know, things on social media, videos and things where you see people comment like, my faith is restored in humanity, you know, things like that. And I think if people can look at you and say, you know, see you doing something good for somebody else, that indirectly influences somebody to then find a reason for them to go out and help somebody else, you know? So it's kind of that ripple effect that goes forward.
Yeah, I think going back to kind of the job hopping, I have been through a lot of different careers or a lot of different jobs, and I've never felt like it was going to be a negative impact on my potential ability to get a new job or to go into a new industry. And it isn't, I think there's a big gap there between the people who are job hopping because they don't believe in themselves, they don't believe that they can fulfill the requirements, so then they quit and they go somewhere else, or it's too hard, or they don't like their boss, or they don't like whatever, so then they quit. And then other people who they show up and they have so much belief in themselves that at a point, it's not even that it's a bad environment where they're at. They just, as you said, they see a better opportunity and they transition. So I went through a lot of jobs, but I've never taken a job outside of one that I can think of that was a paid decrease. The only job I've ever taken that was a paid decrease was right before my LDS mission. I chose to go work on Temple Square and put lights, hang Christmas lights. And that was like it was like 100% pay cut, like I guess 50%, but like got cut in half my wages. But why I did that is because I wanted to associate with certain people and I wanted to be in a certain environment. So it was still a net positive for me, even though the pay wasn't as good, quote unquote. The environment was better than construction, which is where I was coming from. But I think that goes into when spousal relationships, or at least I've seen in mine, my wife doesn't necessarily believe in, and this isn't saying she doubts me, but she's not sitting there like, oh, I know Sam's good at finance. I know he has a good skill, and so that's why he's going to be successful. It's more that she knows in my ability and my belief in myself. So she's not worried whatever I come home and say, I'm going to try this. I literally went to a business coach and met with him. And when I was done meeting with him, I called her up and I was like, hey, babe, we just spent $7,500 on a credit card for X amount of, it was like 18% interest, right? And I was like, this is what we're doing. She's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. Like this is going to help us. She's like, okay. That was the conversation. And it wasn't like, how are we going to afford it? It was, this is really going to help you. Awesome. And it has, it's almost doubled my income for making that one little investment. It's quadruple the amount that I would have got. Well, I never would have got it if I didn't invest, I don't think. So, but it's just interesting. They believe in you as an individual rather than in your skill set or what you might be able to accomplish at any one place.
Definitely. And I mean, kind of going along with that, I kind of alluded to it before. Leaving Goldman Sachs was tough. It was a big leap, I mean, it's secure income. It's a good income. It's, something, it was rated, Goldman Sachs was rated, a year ago as Forbes, number one hardest job to get, at Goldman Sachs. And so that was playing in my head as I was walking in to get my 2 weeks, and
we're dying, fighting, trying to get this
job.
And
I was voluntarily walking out, but I think like you said, I mean, despite a pay decrease or despite, all these things that, the prestige that goes into Goldman Sachs, having that belief again in myself, and like you said, like from a marital relationship, having a wife or significant other being behind you is huge, and taking that leap for me was made possible because of those two things, of the person that meant the most to me and myself believing in this. Again, like you said, not necessarily the fact that speaking and building this rise above business is like I have the skills, but it's the drive, the determination, that reason, and I think with a pure reason comes a pure outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think we're going to talk about your secret weapon. Now the idea of this is not for it to be secret after this episode, so give freely. But if we as an audience were to focus on one habit, mindset, or behavior that you've used to create the majority of your success in life to this point, what would that be? Is it a habit, mindset, or behavior? And then how could we adopt that into our lives? Like what are some daily actions or habits that we could start implementing to start living that habit, mindset, or behavior?
I think for me it's a mindset that develops into a behavior. Stephen Covey said, you sow a thought, you sow an action. I'm paraphrasing, but you sow a thought, you sow action, sow action, you sow a destiny. You sow. So I think it's a mindset that develops into action, but the mindset being that you have so much to give, not only to your own life, but to the life around you, that is so unique and so impactful that only you can give that unique and impactful, impression on this life. And
so how do you foster that? Because if you listen to this podcast, we just took the words out of my mouth. I basically preached the same thing, which is awesome. But how do you, say you're talking to somebody who doesn't believe in themselves?
Yeah.
Is they actually believe the opposite of that statement. Mm-hmm. What things can they do to start that belief, to kind of get the shockers on their chest and jolt them to like,
Right.
I actually am worth something, I actually believe something. So what are the actions, or what can you do to start that belief and jumpstart that belief in themselves?
Definitely. I think it's just by moving, by putting yourself out, finding something that you love, something that you're passionate about, because we all have that. Nobody is without passion. Nobody is without something that they truly love to do. I don't care if it's, going mountain biking or talking to people or anything. You can find something that you love to do and then move forward with that. Find something that relates to that and then relates to you, and that you can make an impactful impression on. And I think that it's finding, again, I alluded to it, of the thing that you're willing to live your life for, not just die for. And if you can find that one thing, whether it's a product, a passion, a person, a business, something that you're willing to live for, that's then the foundation of your reason to believe.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna move on. This is a question that I don't ask all of my guests because it doesn't always apply. But one, I know your story a little bit, so I hope we'll get some good insight here. And also, I know your end goal. And so both of these lead to this question. But when you're leaving the corporate world and you're going ultimately to be an entrepreneur, yes, we can talk about how much your wife believes in you, how much my wife believes in me. We can talk about those things, and they're all great. They're all fantastic things to think and talk about. But at some point, somebody has to feed the family. Somebody has to keep a roof over that. So how did you manage, or how are you managing the financial aspect of cutting the corporate chains and going off and being an entrepreneur and creating your legacy? How did you bridge that financial gap between have money constant coming in, I'm going off my own, and I will have money coming in eventually, but there's a lot of startup costs and time that takes to do that. So how did you bridge that financial gap?
That's a really good question. We actually focused on that for a while on our Rise Above Instagram page. I think it's different for every situation. You hear a lot of motivational speakers and things like that of being like, just go for it, just risk everything, risk everyone, and just go for it. And I think that works for some people, and in their situation, but it doesn't work for everybody. Like you said, with my situation, I have a wife to support, a future family to build for, and so that's not realistic for me. That's not something that you could say, well, you just don't believe in yourself enough. But again, there's belief and there's being naive. There's belief and there's being ignorant to your actual circumstance, and you can get yourself into trouble. And so I think bridging that gap is what I did. Is from Goldman Sachs, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, having a 2-hour commute, and so all my time was zapped that I would wanted to dump into something I love to do. So I found another job that's close by me that obviously wasn't as much money, but it was something that paid the bills, but then gave me 15, 20, 25 hours a week back that I could then dump into something that I love to do. And so I think it's finding your situation and a way to move forward. And I've spoken about this before at Rise Above, that you don't have to immediately just feel like you have to jump into doing what you love and doing what you want to do. But we're actually, this month right now, the theme is doing what you love, and we're going through reasons of why people don't do what they love. And one of them is, I don't have the money. The other one is, I don't have the time. The other one is,
which are both actually the same excuse, but
right, yeah, so a lot of times, yeah, exactly. The other one is, people have already done it, and the other one is, it's I don't have the skills that other people do. And all of them are just a facade, because you don't have to have money to learn about what you're going to do. You don't have to have the money to become an expert on what. If you want to do real estate, you need to know things before you're going to go and do real estate. And so if you don't have the time, then move around. A lot of times that's just saying that I'm not making a priority. I'm not making a priority, and so sometimes you have to move around things, like I did, leaving Goldman, finding a job that was a standard, 40-hour work week, super flexible, so I can support my family and start to build this thing that eventually I hope builds into a career in what I do.
Yeah, I love that, because so many people, like you said, they think they have to jump in. I have a client right now who, honestly, she makes the best fudge I've ever tasted. Okay, and like, that's not an exaggeration. I don't like chocolate very much. Fudge is pretty much the
And
only.
that's when you know it's good.
Fudge is the only form of chocolate that I actually like enjoy. Period. But her fudge is the best fudge I've ever tasted, and so she just has been not. She didn't know how to sell it. She didn't know how to market it. She doesn't know how to do any of that, and so it's been holding off. And when it comes down to it, it's like she was selling it for just enough to like break even and make it worth her pain, because she has some physical problems that make it hard to even make the fudge. And so she's like been putting it off monetizing it because she's just been selling it for just enough to what she believes her pain is worth. And then she's like, oh, well, this person does it, kind of the same excuses. I don't have the time, I don't have the money to really go big. You don't need, this was our last conversation, you don't need the money to get a contract. You don't need the money to go call a bunch of people and see where you can sell your fudge. You don't need the money to do market research on finding out how to package your fudge, how to like create a logo and design and market research of where you can get it, identify your costs, build a spreadsheet. Like, none of that takes money. It takes time, it takes an investment, but a time investment. And so I can see your point where timing is an issue. In my field of work, I often will sit down and talk to a family because I work in finance, and I help them identify, okay, you're working 60 hours a week or 70 or 80 hours a week, 2 or 3 jobs. What if I could teach you how to replace your income doing something different? You could still make the same amount of money in less time. Would getting back an extra 30 to 40 hours a week in your life, what would that mean for your family? Because it's not about the money. Yes, I can help you earn more money, but that's not the question. The question is, why would you want to earn more money? And if I can help you earn more money and it gives you more time with your family, what else does it give you? More time with your family, more time with your faith, more time with your fitness, so you can actually get healthy. Mentally, you can start meditating, you can start doing things that you can start taking care of yourself and living your passions. Even if you don't even like doing what my form of earning income, do you really love working 80 hours a week right now? Like, do you love working that many more hours more than you love spending 40 hours a week with your family? Because you don't have to love what you do with working with me. You just need to like it better than 80 hours a week somewhere else. That's all. Like, you don't have to love it. You just have to like it more than 80 hours a week somewhere else. And then it's a good decision. And that it's interesting how many people still at that point, they're like, it's too difficult to do that. And then they still be working these long hours, and they're sacrificing their family time because they think that's all they can do. And breaking through that to like, no, you have intrinsic value. You have value.
That belief in themselves.
More than what somebody, and I usually walk them through this exercise, and I invite anybody listening to this podcast to do this. For like, if you were to close your eyes and say, okay, what I'm gonna sell 40 hours of my life to somebody. Like 40 hours a week of my life, I'm going to take it to the market and I'm going to sell it to somebody. And I get to set the price of what my 40 hours is worth. During that 40 hours, they're going to tell me what to do, how to do it, when to show up, when to leave, when to pee, everything, right? That's how controlled it is. But here, I'm selling them this 40 hours. If you, in your heart of hearts, what is 40 hours of your life worth? Right? If we were to put a dollar amount on it, what is a dollar an hour wage for 40 hours of your life? Because it's not, because people think, oh, it's a good wage. $15 an hour, that's a good job. Or $20 an hour, $40 an hour, that's a good job. I'm like, that's a good job, but is it really, when you do the value exchange of is 40 hours or $40 an hour, is that really the value of an hour of your life? Like, they control an hour of your life. Is it really only worth $40 to you? and you start thinking about, well, what's an hour of my life worth to me if I was really going to go sell it and I got to set the price? And then anything working for any less than that is out of integrity with yourself. It's just crazy. It's out of integrity with who you actually believe you are. You're just constantly just taking what somebody else thinks you're worth rather than what you think you're worth. So it's fascinating to talk about the financial. And does your wife work, or she get to stay home? What's her?
She is in school and works. Yeah.
Okay, so that helps float the bills a little as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So how can we? And I love your story. I mean, you have to. If you guys didn't catch the full story, because it didn't get told necessarily chronologically, but he basically could have died as a baby, survived, and through all of his sickness in his early years, became a college football player, which is not an easy thing to do. I have quite a few friends who have done it. It's not easy. The amount of time and effort it takes to build up not just your mental ability, but your physical ability to get there, that's incredible. And then went 2 years, served an LDS mission, then went and worked in Capitol Hill during probably one of, I don't know if it's the most controversial election of the world, but of America, but it's not like the least for sure. Went from that to Goldman Sachs, having a super great job and career there, and then deciding he has enough worth somewhere else. So that's an incredible story, and more people need to hear it. And I think it speaks to exactly what Fuel Your Legacy is about. Like, how can we help other people believe in themselves enough to go live and create their legacy? Like, most people aren't living their legacy because they don't believe that they can, and a lot of times it's because of finances or time, which is really just finances. So with that being said, how can people get a hold of you? Where can we connect with you on Instagram, Facebook? Where are you speaking next? Do you have any speaking next gigs? Like, how can we support you the best?
Yeah, for sure. Instagram at rise.above is Instagram handle. Facebook is riseabove.motivate. And then you can find me on Instagram at Jenz Bunnell. It's Jenz and Bunnell. Those are the platforms we're on, and that's what we're kind of built off of. Speaking wise, currently have speaking to a lot of high school football teams, self-help places like the substance abuse, working through that, as well as speaking in other high school classes and assemblies and things like that. So you can find me those places, our company in those places, as well as reaching out for any speaking opportunities.
Awesome. Do you have a website or anything like that yet?
No, just on social media.
Okay, yeah. Social media. I think social media is great. That's where I do most of my business, so it's a great place to be. So this next section here is called Legacy on Rapid Fire, and the purpose of this is to get some really quick one word to one sentence answers about kind of where you're at, where you're going, trying to create some awareness, not just for yourself, but hopefully for the other people in the audience who are thinking, where am I at? Where am I going? Do I know the answers to these questions? If you don't know the answers to these questions, just for you listening, if you don't know the answers to these questions, take a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or a Sunday or a week or whatever and find out these answers to these questions, because these questions are basically the strongest, heaviest 5 rounds of ammo that you could have in your self-confidence magazine, right? Like, knowing where you're going, this is it. So the first question is, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy? Like, what's your next step or that you need to overcome yourself to get to the next place?
It's a good question. I think self-doubt is always going to be in play. Nobody's going to be 100% free of it. I feel like I've gotten a pretty good grasp on that. I would say, the next biggest step is just getting it out there, getting the word out. And I think it starts with, again, the inner self-belief that you're worth that, that you're worth being in front of people, and that your message is something that is worthwhile to those people. So I think it's always a battle of, you know, being, you know, worth that, and then doing it and getting the message out to the masses.
Awesome. So what do you think the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
Hardest thing I ever accomplished? Man, in personal life, I don't know. Well, hardest thing I've ever accomplished was definitely getting in Goldman Sachs and then having to leave. That was one of the toughest.
Both, right? Getting in is tough, and then leaving is tough.
Yes, in a professional sense, definitely that was the hardest thing.
That's awesome. And what do you think the greatest success at this point in your life has been?
I mean, honestly, marrying my wife, and on a personal level, I go personal. Marrying my wife for sure. She's awesome. She's just, you know, above and beyond, and I'm just lucky to be able to have her as my wife. You know.
True that. I haven't met her, but I'm sure she is. And you are lucky to have her. That's how I feel about my wife for sure. And what is if there was one secret that has contributed the most to your success, what would that be?
I think it's, and I alluded to it before, is realizing the impact and influence you have on others, and not only on influence on yourself, like I said, and the perception of yourself, because that's number one importance. But when you have the correct perception of yourself, your influence on others, for better or worse, is so impactful. I say that you change somebody's reason to believe, you change a life. You save somebody's reason to believe, you save a life. And you have that power within yourself to essentially save a life.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So what are a few books that you would recommend, maybe just 3 books that you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
So I told you before, I'm not the biggest reader, which I wish I loved to read books, but I listen to books.
That's all. Same thing.
So,
Same.
Definitely, probably, number one is Man's Search for Meaning. And then secondly, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then the third, As a Man Thinketh is up there as well. So,
all 3 great books, all 3 fantastic books. So, is there anything that you feel like we didn't get to talk about today that you wanted to touch
on? I don't think so. I think I just, I would stress that, yes, when we've talked about it a little bit of, it's easy to say, yes, I believe in myself and it's great. And that doesn't necessarily get you that far until you start acting upon that. Relentless action, brings relentless success is, something I preach, and that belief in yourself then translates belief in others by compassion and encouraging words that again can save lives, and it saves careers, it saves businesses, it saves products, but most importantly, again, you save a life by giving that life a reason to believe.
Awesome, I love it. So here's the final question. It's my favorite final question of all of them, right? But we're gonna have to pretend that you died, okay? And which is kind of a joke at this point, because 6 generations from now we'll probably both still be alive. But we're gonna pretend that we're dead. And we're sitting around the table, or you're watching, and spiritually or however, your great grandchildren sitting around the table discussing Jen's legacy. What do you want them to be saying? Like, what do you want your legacy to be 6 generations?
I guess, like, in a short phrase, it would, he loved life, but more than that, he loved those in his life, and they knew it, they felt it, because it was showed.
Awesome, I love it. That's awesome. And so this week has been great. I'm so excited to finally have you on here. They've heard about you all week on the Monday and on the Wednesday podcast. So just super excited. If you guys want to get a hold of him, please go reach out to him on Facebook. Follow the things that he's doing, especially the Rise Above handle on Instagram. We're going to have those links in the show notes here, but go and follow him. It's always good to have like a daily proverb or a daily thought that's just like, man, so true about life and how we can become better and see ourselves in a more exalted or more beneficial light. We just got to see ourselves at a higher state. And as we start to view ourselves and experience mentally and emotionally what it would be like to live at that higher state, then we will eventually become that higher state. And so I love that message. I love what's here. Just as I mentioned at the beginning of the basically a film here. Beginning of the podcast, my ebook, Fuel Your Legacy, the 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. And you can get access to that if you type in ebook to the phone number 385-263-7699. Yep, just ebook, ebook, E-B-O-O-K, lowercase, uppercase, however you want to do it, and we'll make sure that you get access to that so that you can begin to fuel your legacy. The whole book really goes over exactly what we talked about here. It's 9 reasons why it's important for you to do it, so that others will believe that they can go build their legacy. So with that being said, we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.